I was about halfway through my junior year, and I already had a job, was working, and I was like, why am I wasting my time going to school? I like going to my job better. I want to do that. So at 17, I told my parents that I was going to quit high school, get my GED, and go start working in the world and
At
figuring it out
junior year?
halfway through my junior year.
Wow.
I've had a job continuously without any gap since I was 14 years old.
Jeez, that's a stat right there.
And
Oh
I'm
my
49 years old now, so long time.
God. I'd like to kind of jump back,
Okay.
like way back towards like high school area.
Okay.
I've kind of talked to Liam about this, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Okay.
How was high school for you?
I was not a fan of high school. It's kind of like what you're saying. I was uninterested, disengaged, not motivated, not inspired. It felt like I was just going through the motions. It was like I have to go through high school, so I'm just going to go through the motions. I've never been one that just kind of fit into a box. I've always been kind of an outside the box kind of a
Like
thinker,
creative type of
creative,
person?
and just kind of um, like doing things my own way in a way.
Oh, like a teacher says, I want you to do this, this, and this, and you
Mhm.
don't want to do that?
Or do it. I want you to do it this way to get to an achieved result, but I would do it a different way, but still get to the same result, but I didn't follow their way. So terrible grades. I just wasn't engaged. I did not think about it and didn't care. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Missed a lot of school. Probably wasn't the best kid.
Sure.
But still, I played football and I was in sports and things like that. And by the time I got real close to your guys' age, I was 17. I was about halfway through my junior year, and I already had a job, was working, and I was like, why am I wasting my time going to school? I like going to my job better. I want to do that. So at 17, I told my parents that I was going to quit high school, get my GED, and go start working in the world. Looking back on it, it's what I wanted to do then, but I did miss out on a lot of stuff. I missed out on proms and graduation stuff and some of the things that are important with high school. So I definitely don't recommend that path. But
Well, you were an outside the box thinker. You're
yeah,
just doing your own thing.
just doing my own
You
thing.
got to where you're at, but you just didn't do it the traditional way.
There was a lot of tension between me and my parents with leaving high school and things like that. So at 17, I decided that I was going to move out. So
Wow.
moved out with a friend, got my own apartment. Then when I was working at the oil change place, there was a new car company that was getting started up, and they had opened up a dealership. It was called Lexus. So brand new car company, and I knew they built this new dealership, and they had ads out, and so I went and I met with the service manager there. His name was Mitch Wilcox, and interviewed with him, and he loved me. It was like good connection right off the bat, the whole 9 yards. Problem was, is I was still 17. In order to work for the car dealership and drive their cars around, you had to be 18 to be
Uh,
on insurance. But he said, "Hey, I'll keep your information. We'll see where it goes." So on my 18th birthday, he called me and said, "You ready? Come to work for us." So it made an impression on him clearly that he remembered me, put a marker in his calendar to call me on my birthday and hire me. So he called me. I quit my job at the fast food place, and next thing I know, I was 18 years old driving $60,000 cars around.
that's sweet.
And my job was a valet. So people would bring their cars in for service. They needed a ride home or to their work or something like that. I would hop in a car, drive them to their work, all that kind of stuff. So again, getting to connect with people, talking just like you and I are,
Hmm.
high level people that
Drive Lexuses, yeah.
driving Lexuses all
Yep.
around, and had a good job, and was kind of doing fun stuff and driving cool cars around and things like that. But I was like, I don't really want to be a car salesman. I don't know what I want to do. And I was down in the detail shop one day, and there was a detailer there, and his wife worked at at a bar, and there was this plumbing owner that would go and frequent the bar often, and he was asking her and asking around, like, hey, do you guys know anybody that wants to get into the plumbing trades, things like that. Well, I overheard that conversation, and I thought, that sounds interesting. Like, maybe I'll reach out to this guy.
I've done everything else. Might as well check that one
Yeah,
out
might as well
too.
see what that's all
Check
about.
that box right there.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up saying, hey, I'm interested. Can you put me in contact with this guy that's looking for people? And so called him up, got an interviewed with him. He thought I was way too young, way too green, didn't have enough life experience, things like that. Wasn't really interested. So I just kept calling him week after week after week after week. Just kept bugging him until finally he said, okay, I will give you a job. Stop calling me. Please stop calling me. I'll give you a job. We'll see where it goes. I don't think you're going to work out, but just stop calling me. And so he gave me my start. And I think I was making, when I was working for Lexus, I think I was making $12 an hour. And when I went into the plumbing trades, I took a $4 an hour pay cut. I was making $8 an hour. But I could see that it had better future in it, right? So I was willing to make that change. And there was some tough times. I mentioned the hard work, things like that, and I can remember standing in a plumbing ditch in the pouring rain with just mud everywhere, hard labor, freezing my butt off, and thinking, wow, did I make the right decision? Like last week I was in a warm $60,000 car, cruising around, driving people around, and now I'm standing in a ditch full of mud, the pouring rain. But I could see the end, right? I was meeting these guys that were journeyman plumbers, and they had, good lives and were making good money and things like that. So that was sort of my motivation. By the time I was in my 4th year of trade school as an apprentice, I was already running jobs, and basically the boss of other journeyman plumbers, because I had grown my abilities so much that I was capable of running these jobs.
Because of all those questions you asked and all the attention in detail and all that stuff.
Yep. How do you read plans? How do you do this? What's, just constantly asking questions. And I was just a sponge. And the funny thing is through trade school, I got straight A's.
Really?
I got straight A's through the whole thing. I loved it. I was engaged. And
what do you think your high school GPA was?
Oh my gosh, 1.8 maybe. It was terrible. Terrible, right? So
yeah.
So that's an interesting thing, right? Is it right kid, right fit, or right kid, wrong fit? High school was a wrong fit for me, but you put me into something that I was actually interested in and engaged with, and all of a sudden that same kid can get straight A's.
That's bizarre.
Right? So yeah, finally got through trade school, took my state of Oregon journeyman test, passed it with flying colors, and next thing you know, I was a journeyman plumber. And I think back then, I was making maybe like $60,000 a year or something, which was, a lot of money.
A lot of money compared to
2001, I think it was. So here I was, I think I was 22, 23 when I turned out. And all my friends were just kind of getting out of college and things like that, massive amounts of debt, taking minimum wage jobs, doing whatever. And here I was, making $60,000 a year as a plumber and buying my first house.
Wow.
So I bought my first house at 23 years old.
That's cool.
And I worked for that same company that hired me for the next 2 or 3 years, running high-level jobs. We did a lot of those high-rise condominium buildings down in the Pearl District.
Portland.
Built maybe 5, 6 of those.
Big buildings in downtown Portland.
20-story buildings.
Wow.
Things like that. Yep. So really cut my teeth and learned the whole process, and finally decided, you know what? I bet I could be in business for myself. Why don't I give it a shot? So started doing tons of research on how to start a business, how to do stuff. I had no experience in that. And then got all my ducks in a row, figured it all out. I think I borrowed $1,000 from my parents to get it started, and quit my job and started doing it for myself. But yeah, I did that for 10 years, and it was great. I loved every single bit about it. The hard part was, we started having kids, and all of a sudden, I'm working 60 or 70 hours a week doing everything, all the work out in the field plus all the business aspects of it. And I just didn't want to be a dad that was always at work. I wanted to make sure I spent time with my kids and enjoyed their life growing up, because you only get one shot. And I thought, well, maybe my business is marketable. Maybe I could sell it to somebody. So started asking around. Instantly had 3 other plumbing companies that wanted to basically absorb my business and my guys that work for me, all my equipment, tools, and all that kind of stuff. And so it turned into a little bit of a bidding war. And finally agreed that this one shop was going to be the shop that I was going to go to. So they paid me for my business and then also gave me a job.
You said you're 49 right now.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 5 years, what have you learned?
It's funny. What's become most important to me is time. Time is more valuable than anything. Where I'm at now, looking back on life, you're in such a hurry to get to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, and then once you get there, money becomes less important. It's time with friends, family, things like that. I've worked, like I said, I've worked since I was 14, nonstop. Always been employed, so always had a job, commitments, all those kinds of stuff. And now I'm at the point where those things are important, but less important. Time is the most important thing for me.
Well, I think I'm out of questions.
Okay.
Tom, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, appreciate
I really do appreciate it.
I hope it was interesting.
It was very interesting.
Okay.